You've been talking to dragons again? I've been feeling very inspired to speak to you about personal power lately. I imagine whether you're speaking to dragons, thinking about your personal power, or connecting in other meaningful ways to what it is to be empowered for you, this video likely popped up right at the opportune moment to receive this message. And I imagine it that way because, at least from my perspective, we live in a reality where we can only perceive that which we resonate with. From my perspective, power in this way is actually a natural energy flow, the way I'm describing it. You could look at your breath as power. You could look at the flow of blood through your body as power. In a similar way, we have personal power that we can apply and direct in our lives in various ways. Now, as we go through the experience of life, we may have, let's say, encounters that might inspire us to believe that we don't have a certain level of personal power. But it's my intention that by the end of this video, you will have remembered and recollected that much more of your personal power through simple yet effective shifts in perspective. Because we're at a juncture in this world right now where every single one of us has an option or an opportunity to direct our focus, which is connected to our personal power, to direct our energy, our attention, our time, being humans here, in ways that either enhance our experience of personal empowerment, or we can focus it in other directions. Now, I am Danielle Lynn. I have these kinds of conversations with cool creators such as yourself. And as mentioned, it is my personal intention that I would like to live in a reality where more and more of us are remembering and living and embodying the genius we are. And I imagine that we each do that by not only remembering our genius, but giving ourselves permission to apply it in this life. All right, let's tune in a bit. All of us are being invited to embody what it is to live as our genuine personal power. Now, some people might hear the word power and they might hear power over others, but that's not the power we're talking about today. We're talking about the power that comes from empowering oneself, empowering your life. In other words, your life having the fuel, the energy, the space, the life force required to live it to its fullest. And some of the ways that we consciously or unconsciously disempower ourselves is to literally and figuratively choke the breath of our life. Sometimes because, let's say, we may feel deeply afraid of who we become when we embody that power. Now, that's not to say we must be afraid, but some of us, especially when within we actually have quite beautiful hearts, we have observed what happens in some cases with what appears to be unchecked power. And sometimes through empathy, we may choose to perceptively dim our own light. I'm here to offer you some views to shift beyond those places, because it is my perception that as each of us embodies genuine empowerment, we not only light up our personal genius, but we begin to co-create and contribute to an experience of this reality that's truly satisfying. Because you embodying your personal power isn't just about your self gains. I find embodying personal power actually lifts your entire world up. This includes those in your life. This includes those in your reality. In other words, through being who you are, you actually make this world a better place, as seemingly corny and cliche as that might sound. So I'm going to share a few pertinent messages. As mentioned, please explore this with discernment. Ultimately, these are the reflections that feel the most resonant to share at this time. And if you're watching this video, I imagine on some level this connects with you. So if you like, we can take a breath in together. So when we're talking about personal empowerment, personal power, and we're exploring that interesting space between being aware we're deeply powerful, but let's say sometimes feeling the blocks or the pressures of disempowerment. One of the first places that I often look at is, where do we personally feel lack or scarcity at the moment? Because this usually provides us an indicator of where we are, let's say, denying our own self, our sense of fulfillment, love, happiness, whatever it is. And the story that we usually tell about that area of our life, so whether it's money or whether it's time or whether it's relationships or whether it's just how we feel personally, the stories that we've told ourselves are being invited to come up for curious review. And the reason I start with the stories is the stories are often what we have used to, let's say, make sense of life up until this point. But stories can also be used to, let's say, perpetuate certain patterns and ways of being. So, as an example, if you have felt challenged in relationships and you told yourself a story, oh, well, it's just hard to find people, or there's nobody out there right now for me, then on one hand, that may, let's say, assist you in feeling more aligned because, okay, well, if it's hard out there to find something, it's not like I'm doing anything wrong. It's just hard. Or, there's no one out there right now. So it's understandable that I wouldn't find anyone. Now, again, that can assist a certain part of you in feeling empowered, but it also keeps you in a story. If your story is that it's hard to find someone, then you are living in the reality where it is hard to find someone. It's as simple as understanding that what you consistently believe or perceive inevitably shapes what you allow to reach you or not. So, once again, this opportunity to bring into review any place where you have felt disempowered and simply ask yourself, what is my story around this right now? So, like, for example, if it's money, it might be something like, I got to work so hard for money, I won't be able to make enough, I can't do this, or I can do that, or I'm really angry about the situation. And we're just bringing it up for awareness. I feel like this motion right here that felt inspired to be done while we're talking, it feels like bringing ideas and the ambient thoughts from the peripheral of our mind and then just bringing them into focus, bringing that story into focus. What it allows you to do is, again, it's not about judging yourself or trying to jerk the story around, but sometimes it can be surprising what you actually are thinking when you, it's like, no, it's a book, when you read it out loud to yourself. Oh, I am saying money is hard. I am saying it takes a lot of time and energy to do this. Fascinating. And whether or not you believe that's true, because you may turn around and say, but of course it's true, it's been my only experience. I would offer to you that it may have been your experience up until this point. But the pathway to have a new experience coincides with doing, embodying, or considering something that you may not have considered before up until this point. We can have a lot of empathy that you may have experienced life a certain way up until this point. But I offer you the consideration simultaneously that just because you may not be aware of another way of life being doesn't mean that other way doesn't exist. I'll say that in an even more clear way. There are so many ways of living this life in reality, and we can see that through so many different lives that exist right now. And we can create stories about why some people are living, let's say, a certain way, why other people are living another way. But I find it even more accurate to get genuinely curious about where I am right now, and then from here, see what is possible. I often offer to people, if you find yourself feeling very angry about the idea of accessing your personal power, there may be a part of you that on some level is looking for forgiveness. You may be looking for forgiveness from yourself. You may be simultaneously shutting your power off from the world. You may be angry at the world. You may be angry at a person or a situation. Sometimes when we are consciously or unconsciously, we create a pattern where we shut down ourselves from the world. And the way through that, there's no one that's going to pry that from you. You are the way through that. There's no external circumstance that will come through and pry it open for you. There may be external circumstances that inspire you to take action within yourself, but it is still you. You are the keeper of your personal power, no matter how it may seem. If there was a point I could emphasize more than anything else in this video, is that you right here, right now, are connected to your personal power, no matter how it may seem. And even if there is a habit of, let's say, appearing to give away your personal power, or not holding or cultivating your personal power, I would view your personal power, for example, as a faucet. Okay, the power always flows. And whether or not you are cultivating the power could be related to how you focus your energy. So it'd be like a cup. And so that faucet is flowing. And if you're constantly pouring out your cup like this, the moment a few drops go in, it may feel as though you don't have power, or you're constantly just in this state of filling and dispersing the cup. When you give yourself respect and love, and sometimes this is through the form of saying resonant yeses and nos, or this can be through the form of boundaries, or it can be through the form of completing relationships that don't honor you, or situations that don't honor you, or through tending to your mental garden, through exploring different ways to see patterns, through talking to yourself lovingly and shifting beyond a shame, blame, guilt pattern, and taking the consistent steps that allow you to integrate yourself, so that when the, let's say, life force is filling the cup, you can see it starts to rise. It simply becomes something that we realize we are stewards of. You are the steward of your personal power. You are the steward of it. And some of the ways that you are remembering how to steward is through a deep sense, once again, of self-love, self-respect, and self-curiosity, which sometimes involves, if you feel shame, blame, and guilt, sometimes involves a journey of personal integration through taking the steps of self-forgiveness. You could look at forgiveness simply as reconciliation, simply as a release of tension or release of a story in opposition to yourself. Because most blocks, especially around personal power, are simply resistance to your own energy. And that can create a dynamic of resistance within the self towards the self. So forgiveness is the actual energy of reconciliation, of bringing that power back home. Reconciliation is simply about allowing yourself to feel, I understand, I've been holding this cup of water away from myself, and I've been so thirsty, my goodness. And it's allowing yourself to feel the reconciliation of maybe the sorrow or the confusion that comes from it, but without necessarily blaming yourself, simply understanding that you were moving in the way you knew how in the moment. And so then sitting in the presence of that reconciliation simply becomes an observation, a certain kind of being with the moment. When you're being with the moment and just seeing it as it is and not trying to change it, That's another way to describe deep acceptance. Because people sometimes mistake acceptance for a mental agreement with what's happening, but acceptance could be seen more as a state of being. It's a embraced state, it's a relaxed state, and it's a state of alchemy. I find it is what reveals and releases to us great deals of personal power. Because most of the time when people want something, they usually say that they don't have enough money or time or space or energy. And what I'm describing here are the pathways to cultivating all of those. This is the pathway to tending to your garden of personal power. Now, a few further thoughts. Personal power doesn't need to mean selfishness. I find it is not selfish to take deep care of your energy. And in fact, a well tended to, well watered, well nourished tree will bear far more fruits than a tree that is constantly giving its resource away and struggling to provide for itself. By nourishing yourself, you become a fountain upon this world in which the excess energy cultivated naturally flows around you and naturally contributes to the world. Embracing your personal power, once again, isn't necessarily about simply a love of power for power's sake. It's about loving yourself so deeply, you allow yourself to take the biggest breaths, have the biggest gulps, eat the biggest bite of cake, to nourish yourself, your inner spirit, your inner sense of wonder, so that it has the capacity to express itself, to say no to disempowering situations and experiences, and to tap in and utilize your personal will in all the ways that are joyful for you. If your will feels low, just remember, the biggest bonfire can start from the tiniest spark, and your spark is always alive in you. In the beginning, when we are getting a spark to, let's say, light higher and higher, we might feed it sawdust, smaller sticks, smaller things that it can consume. So if you are in a place where you perceive distress, begin where you are at, but apply that will, apply it with your full heart and being. That fire, that flame, oh, it catches very fast, very soon. Another invitation that I'll share with you right now is if there's a personal animal or a personal figure, an archetype, something that really speaks to you, I would say it's calling to you at this time. When we feel called to explore archetypes, animals, as let's say symbols or totems of personal power, it gives us an opportunity to contemplate and focus on those qualities that are already present within ourselves. It's almost like it enhances our ability to tap into it consciously, subconsciously, superconsciously. So perhaps consider this also a confirmation or invitation. If you have been drawn to certain archetypes lately, or certain animals, or certain figures, that this is confirmation that those figures of empowerment are showing up at this time to really walk this path with you. And so if you feel inspired, maybe look them up, maybe explore a book about it, maybe read stories or draw pictures or poems, really engage with it. And imagine what it is to be that in big and small ways in your life. When I decided to embody and play with the spirit of alchemist, I allowed myself to play with that in big and small ways, what it is to simply transmute. And without needing to be seen that way, I allowed myself to simply be that way. And now it's very fun because I experience it being reflected to me. But that is because at this stage in my journey, it's natural for me. And so in a way, your power and this expression is a merging of what it is to naturally be that, not because you have to effort or cultivate your way into being it, but because you're already that. and you're breathing life into it by giving yourself permission, moment to moment to moment. This is really powerful today, my friend. A final note for you and for all of us. As you connect with your personal power, you explore what it is, you take the steps to be discerning about what's a yes in your life, and you leave the no's. Simply remember that if and when you come across places of disempowerment, power isn't about trying to overcome things per se. Power can simply be your ability to be as you are in any given moment and emanate who you are without needing the outside to change first before you're allowed to experience the power within. There is a certain power to that. All right, my friend. If you are curious in exploring power deeper, I have a dragon meditation active in the Self-Alchemy Lab. If you are a member, you can check it out. Otherwise, in the description link, there is a passageway there to explore being a member of the lab. I also, in my link tree, have certain portals and opportunities active at this time for those who are choosing to deepen their walk of reality creation and personal empowerment. I would invite you to check them out. And at the time of recording this video, please reach out sooner than later, because this is a time in which each of us is being invited to breathe life into our realities in really authentic ways. In all cases, my friend, appreciate you, and I look forward to our next conversation.